What's going on, everybody? Music Legend here, and I have a new review. Yes, I know I said I'm going to do the Asking Alexandria review today, but I want to listen to that album one more time and get some more in. So, I'm going to continue with the regularly scheduled Linkin Park month. Now, I know I'm wearing my black sweatshirt, and I know that I usually tend to wear that when I review an album that's not very good. Although this album is far from that. This is a fantastic album. One of Linkin Park's best albums, and definitely their most underrated. It's fairly short. It's in the middle of two albums that I found okay. I think this is really their true last album with all of their original sounds. This thing features sounds from Hybrid Theory, sounds from Meteora, sounds from Minutes to Midnight, and sounds from 1,000 Suns. So let's get to the album. Track 1 is Lost in the Echo. This is one of Linkin Park's biggest hits on this album. There were 3 real hits on this album, although none of them are really, to this day, still insanely popular. Lost in the Echo is great. It's got a really good rap by Mike. Mike's rap is great on this album. They don't digitally distort their vocals like they did on 1,000 Suns, which is great because Mike and Chester's vocals are so good, you don't need vocal distortion. There's also a really good electronic beat that is a very fresh and new sound of electronic beat that works a lot better than the previous ones on 1,000 Suns. In the terms of it's upbeat, it's fast-paced, there's guitar blended in with the electronics, and there's even some kind of cool distorted screams mixed in with some discs later in the song. And it's really cool to hear Chester scream. He didn't really scream as much on 1,000 Suns, or really on Minutes to Midnight, even though I love Minutes to Midnight. So it's kind of cool to hear him kind of have a weird, kind of different scream. And I like how this album kind of does that. And the next song is In My Remains. This is a really good song too. It's on the mellower electronic side, but it sounds great. The vocals are great. In fact, Mike and Chester's vocal delivery on this album might be its best. I know I always say it's good, but this album I think is fantastic for Chester and Mike's vocals. This is the first album where Mike's physical vocals and non-rap actually really shined. They're also very good on One More Light and pretty good on The Hunting Party as well, but I think this is probably his best vocal album. And Chester's best is Meteora, but this is a really good vocal album for Chester nonetheless. And this song really shows their chops, good background music, it all works. Track 3 is Burn It Down. Now, Burn It Down is probably the biggest hit off this album, and deservingly so. It's pretty popular, it's pretty radio friendly, it's got some kind of like electro guitars, it's got some cool audio kind of distortion, it's got some really cool electronic kind of mixed in with it. It sounds really good. Again, it's a good taste of what's on the album. It really is this sound that is a mix of everything. There's kind of some traces of 1,000 Suns and the kind of electronic kind of and the vocals kind of I get a bit of an 1,000 Suns vibe from, which by the way, I kind of over-satirically talked about that album. It's not the worst thing ever, I just don't care for it because of its substance. But back to the regular review, I like the vocal delivery on this thing. It's got a really catchy chorus and hook. It's a great song. And 4th is Lies, Greed, Misery. This is probably one of the only songs on this album I didn't really care for. Chester's vocals are a little bit pitchy and kind of screechy on this thing. And I don't really care for the rap and the background kind of electronic beat is a little bit kind of clicky and really kind of staticky, and it sounds a little too much like the ones on 1,000 Suns that didn't work too well. But this is the only time we really see that. The next song at track 5 is All Be Gone. Now, if you've watched my top 4 most underrated Linkin Park songs, this is on that list. And many of the songs on this album I would put on this list. In fact, I was thinking before I made that list, should I put 2 songs from Living Things on here? I was also considering putting Roads Untraveled because that is a fantastic song as well, but that's later in this album. This is a really good song. I get a very Minutes to Midnight-y vibe from it. It's got good background guitar, great vocals from Chester, no real distortion. The electronics work very well with the rest of the song. It's a very catchy song, and I get a very Minutes to Midnight-y vibe. In fact, it almost sounds like it could have been a B-side to Minutes to Midnight, but that's just me. Track 6 is Castle of Glass. Now, Castle of Glass is another really sentimental song with some very good vocals by Mike. This was the first song to me where I think Mike's vocals are very mature and very good. Now, Mike is a very talented rapper and a very talented singer. And this song, there's no distortion, it's just his raw vocals, very sentimental vocals. The music video is very nice to the song. It's about families being visited by the military at their doorsteps, and there's kids that are upset about their mother or father passing away in the war. I think it's a very good lyrical message. I like the very mellow, very sentimental sound on this song. It gets me almost. It's a very good, very emotionally gripping performance. And it's one of their best vocal performances for Mike. And Chester has good vocals on this thing too. And it's also got a very catchy chorus as well with some kind of shaky, kind of weird sounding guitars, but they sound good in this. And track 7 is Victimized. Now this is kind of the Hybrid Theory-esque track of this album. It's a very heavy, very short track. It's only about 1 minute and 45 seconds or so. But you get some rap, you get a rap verse from Mike that sounds a lot like his old Hybrid Theory stuff. And you get some just hardcore screaming with some punchy guitars and some dingy drums. And it's kind of just a really short track, but it's kind of it kind of reminds me of stuff you hear on Hybrid Theory. And a little bit, I don't know why, but the background kind of, I get kind of it's like a mix of like the electronics from 1,000 Suns and the vocals from The Hunting Party, which actually sound pretty good together. And track 8, we have Roads Untraveled. This song is probably my favorite song on the album. This thing is amazing. The background guitars on this thing, in the verses, the oh sung by Chester. Oh man, Mike's vocals are fantastic on this song. Chester's vocals, the vocal delivery gives me chills. I have chills just talking about this song. It's so good. It's such a this is my favorite Linkin Park sound right here. That mix of electronic and guitar with mellower vocals by both Chester and Mike. It's so good. It's such a solid song. And it really is, in my opinion, probably the best song on this album. The next one is Skin to Bone. This is a shorter song. It's got good vocals. I don't really have a lot to say about it because it's one of the more filler tracks of this album, which there isn't too many of, but this one is like that, Lies, Greed, Misery. Those two tracks are kind of more filler. This is a decent enough song. It's got kind of a good lyrical message about ass to ass, dust to dust, stuff like that. But there's really not like a ton of special things that really make it stand out on this album. And the next song at track 10 is Until It Breaks. Now this song I also liked. It's got a pretty cool kind of rap verse thing. It's also got some good vocals. Again, it's not really my favorite song on this album. I definitely like it, but again, I don't really like Mike's rapping as much. Chester's vocals are decently well. It's an okay song, but yeah, it's decent enough. Track 11 is Tinfoil. This is this album's instrumental song, which is usually the second to last song on every Linkin Park album. Whether it's Drawbar, whether it's the 7 that are on 1,000 Suns, just pick one. Whether it's the song Session off of Meteora, the song Wake, which is the first song on the album, which is different, but there is some albums where there's some instrumental at the beginning, like Forward on Meteora. It's just like a banging kind of nail thing, but this is just an instrumental track. It's kind of Johan showing off his chops. It's cool to see it here. It works well. It's a good instrumental track. It works. It's got a cool electronic sound. Yeah, and the last track at track 12 is Powerless. I liked this song as well. It's a great conclusion to the album. It gives you a really good kind of recap of all the different sounds you heard on it. It's a very good mix of everything. It's just a great way to wind out the album, and I'm glad they put it where it goes because it's a great closing track. It's a little bit like Pushing Me Away, where it's a good closing track. It's not like a heavy thing, it's not like an electronic thing, it's just a mix. It's really good. So guys, overall, I'd probably have to give this album an 8. I really like this album. I thought it was a solid listen. I listened to this full album a lot on rotation. It's very good to listen to when you're studying. I know that's kind of irrelevant, but it just is. I love the sound on this. It's perfect. It's the best, in my opinion, Linkin Park sound, which also it shares with Minutes to Midnight. Those two albums, I think if they kept that same sound for all their albums after Meteora, that would be great, because I just love that somewhat mellow, somewhat heavy, kind of just a regular alt-rock sound, kind of a regular soft rock sound. It comes together great. The vocal delivery is fantastic. Mike has some great vocals on this album. Chester's got some shining moments on this thing. There's some memorable songs on here. There's really no songs that I don't like other than Lies, Greed, Misery. Overall, this is just a great album. So guys, that's all. As always, remember to subscribe, like, comment, and subscribe, obviously. Mostly subscribe. And remember to check out my Asking Alexandria album review, which I'm doing tomorrow. It's going to be a pretty big review, and so I want to kind of take my time on it, and I'm going to be staying after and working in the lab and getting some stuff done. It's going to be a really good video. I'm going to put a lot of effort into it. It's going to be one of my best reviews. I'm going to talk about my initial expectations for the album, some stuff I liked about it, and then some disappointments. And a little bit of a forewarning, there is some bias in this thing, in this review. I didn't really care for the album as much as I would have liked to, and there are quite a few things that I was disappointed by, so just be forewarned, there is going to be some of that. I'm going to try to keep it unsatirical, like I was pretty satirical with the Thousand Suns review. This one I'm going to try to keep pretty unsatirical, but keep in mind this is my opinion. I didn't really care for some of the choices Asking Alexandria made for this album. So that's all, guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe like I said, and remember to stay awesome.